Hubbub, a chaotic din caused by a crowd of people.
This episode of the Hubbub podcast is sponsored by Evolve, the Pipedrive CRM experts, your trusted partner for the #1 easy-to-use and effective sales CRM, Pipedrive, helping you get started and maximise your CRM investment.
Hello and welcome to the Directors Hub podcast, Hubbub. This is Series 6 and we are on Episode 6 today. I'm Faye Miller from Gingerbread World with my co-host Bruce Bignall from Evolve Pipedrive.
Hello.
And today we have Dan Wilson from Sight and Stage with us.
Hello there.
Hi Dan, nice to have you on the show. Tell us a bit about your business and what you do.
So Sight and Stage is a site management and crewing company that provides basically manpower to the wider event industry, predominantly the big outdoor music festivals. That's what we started in, although more recently we've been spreading our wings into more corporate events around the London area. So that's what we do mainly.
Lovely. So how did you get into that? You started in 2015, but were you doing that before for other people, or were you doing something completely different?
I've been in the events industry since I was 22, so I've been doing it about 30 years. I was lucky enough to meet someone in a job. I had a job running the main bar at Kingston University when I was about 22.
Nice.
And the commercial manager there had a contract to provide crew to all the big music festivals at the time, so Reading and Leeds and Tribal Gathering and Flower, or whatever else I was doing. And he said, "Do you want to come along have a go? Do you want to come and have along and be crew for one of the shows?" And I went along, and I was just like, "This is amazing." So you go along when you're 22 years old, and you go to a festival, and you're the first person on site, totally greenfield site. You build the whole thing from the start, so all the fence, all the scaffolding that goes up for the signage and all that kind of stuff, and then you get to learn how to drive forklifts and stuff like that at the age of 22. It was just like, that was it. I was completely hooked. So,
and what age did you get your license? Just drive?
Not immediately. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I mean, in the early days, you didn't really need one, but as health and safety has increased and improved, it's really important now. Everybody that works for me has to have the license in place. So I did that for a few years while I was working for him, and then I got into running festival bars. I used to have a big festival bar company, and then I went into site management, and I had my own site management company, which is basically where you design the festival, CAD draw it, spec it, do the quality surveying, provide all the book all the equipment through the suppliers, and I've been doing that, and I was doing that right up till 2021. Actually, I was part owner of Sight and Stage, and I had my other company which was called Event Experts, which was doing the site management side. And then in 2015 I was running a really nice show called Lapland UK in Ascot, which is a big Christmas show. And me and my business partner at the time, we met and talked and discussed, and we set up Sight and Stage in 2015 with me originally as a silent shareholder, and over the course of the last 10 years I've ended up to be sole owner.
Brilliant. So going back to those early days, you were 22 when you started, and you said it was really cool, basically rocking up to a site that's completely, there's nothing there, and you have to build the whole thing. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine the logistics behind that, like having to bring in, because I'm assuming you have to bring in toilets out of the lot.
Absolutely everything, yeah. I mean, most greenfield sites don't have any services at all, so there's no power, there's no water, there's no internet, there's no waste, so not only are you bringing clean water in, but you've got to take away the grey water. It's obviously changed a lot over the years. I mean, when I first started doing festivals, it was all Pythagoras' theorem and 100-metre tape measures, and trying to map it out on this site and make it all fit. Now it's all drawn on CAD, GPS systems that are accurate within 1 centimetre. You literally can mark out a whole site in an afternoon. So it's really changed.
That makes it a bit easier then, does it, to do it? I mean, I'm sure the logistics. Trying to do it.
You've got to be careful that you don't use the GPS as a cheat. GPS is very good at giving you a location,
right?
But you've got to still look at it and look at the 3D space.
See if it works in the.
Because it's like building a house in some respects, because you're putting in all the services. It's like building a building or a town or city or however you want to call it, but you've got the options to be a little bit more flexible than planning, because obviously planning is it goes there and nowhere else, otherwise you've got to go back to get permission again to move it, whereas in a festival site you can adjust it to make it look pretty, which is the most important thing, because you want to give the people who are turning up the best experience you possibly can. So but it can be a logistics nightmare. You've got to be able to deal with, you know, some of these events of thousands of trucks, literally thousands.
God, I can imagine going in and out. So what do you start with? Do you start with like getting the utilities in, like the electricity and the water? Is that the way you start, or do you start with, say, main stage first, or does it depend on each job?
It can depend on each show, but the way to do it usually is to put the protective fence around the site first to make it safe. So you put your big solid steel shield fence around it, or your Harris or whatever you're using, to make sure that you keep the general public out, so you can go into your CDM regs, which is your building regs, to make sure that it's safe. And then the next big thing that goes down is the ground protection. So obviously most of these are on greenfield sites, and you can't drive a articulated truck on a field very easily, especially if it's wet. So putting down aluminium trackway to create roads and stuff like that is the next thing. Then it's sort of fairly organic, and it's sort of a bit of everything, a bit of marquees, bit of cabins, power comes in obviously. The staging, the entertainment are usually fairly early on, especially the main stage. The main stage will come in and you'll start building that from fairly on, because they're usually just the amount of equipment and labour that's required to build them. But it's very short. I mean, it still amazes me to some extent that most music festivals are built within 7 to 10 days.
That was going to be my next question: is how long does it take on average? I mean,
it obviously depends on the scale. You know, some music festivals are 2-day weekend shows with no camping. Some music festivals are 4 days with camping, and there's obviously a very large difference on the amount of land that you're taking over to facilitate that. And but they all still happen in a very, very short space of time. And not only do they go up in a short space of time, but they come down in half the time. Because most often that equipment that is on site is hired.
It's got to go.
And it's got to go to the next show, because it's making money, because all these people are trying to make the same amount of money in the same amount of space of time. So, a toilet is, off site on the Monday morning after the show, back to the yard, cleaned, back on the road on Tuesday, ready for the next show on Wednesday, Thursday. So
it's a really quick turnaround then.
It's all very, very quick. So being able to manage all of the different suppliers and ins and outs, and build schedules, etc., across all the different things. And you can have areas where like sponsors come in and have their own build schedule, so you have like micro builds going on your bigger builds and stuff. So it's it's quite good. That's hence why I haven't got any hair.
The stress of managing it all. I guess no two builds are ever the same, and even if it's the same festival year on year, it's going to be different.
It does get easier. I mean, I did the Sundown Festival in Norfolk for about 8 years, and by year 8 I could pretty much put anything down exactly where I needed it to go, because I just knew I'd made the mistakes to some extent on site, so it wasn't such a big deal. So
what are some of the biggest festivals that you've worked on? Have you done all the big ones in the UK?
There's different ways of working. Sometimes I just provide the crew, and sometimes I provide the site management. So we provide crew to a lot of the big ones. So Boomtown, British Summertime, All Points East, Bella Drum up in Scotland. We do Sundown. I mean, we do an awful lot of festivals around the country. The biggest one I've probably done, I haven't really run a big one recently. Probably the biggest one I've done in my time would have been Bestival on the Isle of Wight, which was 65,000 camping show. Blimey. But had the added complication of having to ship everything over on ferry. So it was an interesting one there, and it was also in a valley. Beautiful site, but it was in a valley, and if it was wet, it was tough, really tough.
God. Yeah, see the mud, that's the one thing that intrigues me, because we've all seen the pictures of Glastonbury when it rains and how disgusting it is for the the revelers there and everything. I mean, you said you put down the special tracks are coming in, but that must be something it must be a challenge to deal with that when the weather's
I mean, if you get
bad.
a really wet show, I did one a few years ago called Why Not up in the north, and if it's really wet, you can spend months digging out stuff out because you just can't see it.
Really?
You know, the trackway after a period of time will just, liquefaction into the ground, and it will just get buried, and then you have to go along and literally metal detect.
I was going to say the detectorists
Yeah,
2
they
weekends after.
literally-
What's this? Oh, it's
Yeah.
a bloody track.
Yeah, and it's literally
Roman
a case
coins.
of digging it all out, and it just slows everybody down.
What did they do when you were starting? Because would you have had the same aluminium?
Yeah,
track
the aluminium
before?
trackway's been around for a long time. Yeah, it's been around since I've started. So, to be fairly honest, I've been doing it 30 years. The products haven't really changed. They may have been adapted and improved. Like in the old days, the trackway used to be bolted together and the bolts used to be really exposed and a real trip hazard. Whereas now they're all recessed, so they're a smooth walking, so you can walk on them safely. So there's been improvements, but the actual general practice of Harris fencing, for example, which is the construction fencing you see around most building sites, the mesh fencing about 3 meters long and 2 meters high, that is just standard equipment. It hasn't changed in 30 years. And we put up kilometres of it. I mean, Boomtown is something silly like 44 kilometres of Harris.
That's mad, isn't it?
I have 10 guys on it for 44 days.
Is there a car park somewhere in the UK that just has probably 10,000
there's
kilometres of
lots
this?
of car parks, but there are lots of fields basically. So there's fields and fields and fields of Harris during
Where it all just
the
lives.
winter. You can get drone footage on our sort of our social media feeds of just these fields of Harris and ped fencing and stuff that's just sitting there not being used because no one's putting on. And it just sits there for ages, but it's a constant business as well, because obviously the fence doesn't last very long because it's aluminium and quite flimsy.
Yeah.
You probably get 10 or 15 uses out of it, and then you need to reply it. So it's quite a big churn on stuff. So
It's as you say, you see that fence all the time for events, and you see it along the seafront and that for when they've done the concerts down on the beach and everything. But it was I think it was Preston Park, and I can't remember what event it was. It might have been Pride, but instead of that fence, they had this really high, solid metal. It was like a prison or something.
yeah, no, that's Steel Shield. So
Yeah.
Steel Shield is, or that's one of the products. It's called a number of different things. T-Shield, Steel Shield, but it's basically a 3.5 meter high solid fence that's pinned into the ground, and it's built to keep people out. That's its intention, because obviously all these promoters have spent hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of pounds promoting and building these events.
Yeah.
And if you get a load of people that jump over the fence and get in free, is obviously not fair on the promoter, but also there's the risk factor because you don't know what's coming in, because obviously everybody that comes into that site needs to go through security, get wanded, we're really tight since what happened in Manchester to keep on top of everything, bag checks, people checks, searches. Not only are you keeping out drugs, but you're trying to keep out the weapons. So it's really important that we try and keep out people. And it does seem quite obtrusive because it was even up for the Winter Fair in Brighton, and I thought that it looked quite
It
quite
looks
imposing.
quite
doesn't it?
intimidating, or like it's a fortress.
And I mean, you can get it bigger and bigger, because that one that you've seen comes actually with an addition that comes another 3 foot at an angle, so you can't actually climb up it.
Okay.
And then you go into something called fortress fencing, which is even more robust, which goes around Glastonbury.
Yeah.
And that takes, Glastonbury takes several months to build. That's an exception to the rule, that one.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Glastonbury is one of the biggest ones, isn't it? I've never been, but
it is the biggest,
or most iconic at least.
Yeah,
anyway.
it's definitely the biggest in the UK. I mean, Boomtown is definitely, on its way to get there, but it's a different kind of vibe, because obviously Glastonbury has multiple stages. Lots of live entertainment, lots of live music, lots of performers, whereas Boomtown is a little bit more just electronic dance music.
So, have you had to send crews to Glastonbury before and get involved with that one?
We kind of stay away from Glastonbury, to be honest.
Yeah.
I try and stay away from the really big shows like Glastonbury, Commonwealth, Olympics, all those kind of things like that, because you just get swallowed up by those.
Right.
And to some extent, you don't do anything else. I mean, if you send crew to Glastonbury, you could lose them for 10 weeks.
Yeah.
At least, if not longer. Whereas we kind of do most of our work on not smaller shows, but more manageable 2 or 3 weeks time. Because if you send a team to Glastonbury for 10 weeks, you can guarantee there's going to be some issues. You're going to have some welfare issues that you're going to have to deal with, either falling out or food, or there's so many things that people need to live effectively in that kind of environment.
So when does the festival season run in the UK? Do you have like a season where you're seriously busy and then when you're quieter?
Yeah, it's almost exactly from the middle of May till the end of September, end of August really. It does sometimes spread into September. Yeah. But even some of the shows that I used to do in September have now started to dissipate. So the last weekend in August is usually like the finale. There's some that dribble into September, and you're obviously waiting for the good weather. So, I am doing a festival actually on Sunday. Okay. I'm building one down up in Bygraves Woods, but it's a different kind of event. It's a live action role play. So it's 1,000 people dressing up in Dungeons and Dragons kind of outfits and having a role play event. So that's a new one for me that I've picked up this year. Just see how that goes.
I had a question about where do events go? Is it more micro events? Is it more niche? That's literally what I had in my mind. Do you bring these online worlds to the real life?
Yeah, so they're doing it. So it's called LARP, and it's live action role play, and it's not massive. Yeah. It's obviously quite niche. Yeah. It's a bit of a spin on the sort of cosplay kind of exhibitions that they used to have, but now I don't really know because I haven't done it yet, but I think it's what I can see from the site design is it's sort of like a in character area and an out of character area, and when you're in character you're doing battles of some description. Hopefully not live battles. I'm sure there's some risk assessments been done, but
I went to the 850th anniversary of the Battle of Hastings at Battle Abbey a few years back now, probably 10 years ago maybe, slightly less, and they had 1,000 people there all dressed in. So there's a thing. They were all dressed in, and the people had come from the Netherlands and Germany and France because they were into this role play, and they were dressed as knights, they were dressed as monks, they were dressed as like I don't know what you call them, like women that didn't they weren't. I don't know if they had jobs, but anyway, it doesn't really matter, does it? But they were all fully dressed, even down to the special leather shoes they would have worn in the day and everything. It's quite something. I
think it's going to be quite interesting. Quite looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So that's on Sunday.
And what's the favourite event that you've loved putting on, or do you still put them on?
I was lucky enough to be put in as site manager for Lapland UK back in the very, very early days when it was over in Buellwater in Kent. Yeah. And for those that don't know, Lapland UK is a very immersive theatre experience that's now based in Ascot. So I moved that project from Buellwater to Ascot. So I designed the whole site in Ascot for that event, and it was something so different to the way that I'd worked previously, because it's not a show where people turn up en masse for one event. Because I think that the guy I worked for, Mike Battle, when I worked for him, he was very clear. People will pay £75 plus to go and stand in a field with 65,000 other people to watch Robbie Williams, and they will totally accept that price. But if people are paying £75 to go and see Father Christmas, they want it to just be them and their children in that room. And to switch that dynamic around in my head and to try and build a site that could achieve that but still have 65,000 people turn up was a challenge, and it was amazing. And it's one of the best shows, and it's now growing. It's now gone to Manchester, so that this year they're doing 2 shows, and it's gone from being open 40 days to now being open 60 days kind of thing. It's a huge thing, but I'm very proud of what I did when I built that, because I came up with a specific site design whereby it was in a theatre. You're sitting in a theatre seat and the props move, and the prop moves and they change the scene, and you sit there for 2 hours or 3 hours, and in Lapland UK you move the audience, so the audience moves to the next scene. Okay. And it's just a really cool show. I wish I had shares in it. But
So, do you get to go to many of them? Are you quite hands-on still with when you're putting them together, or is it a bit more hands-off now?
I mean, I'm. It's a bit of a cross between two, basically.
Yeah.
I've got a large crewing company, so the crewing company is keeps me very, very busy at all times. It's very complicated. There's lots of personalities involved in dealing with 200 plus people that work for me at the time. That said, I still love putting events on and building events, so I still cherry pick the events that I build and do. As for the actual acts and the artist, and I have no interest whatsoever. It does not interest me at all. I couldn't tell you who was playing at any of the events that I'm
Oh,
doing.
really? So you don't get to meet any of them, or if you have, you're not that fussed if you do or don't anyway?
I mean, the starstruckness was when I was 23, 24, 25.
Yeah.
Now, I couldn't tell you who it was or what the name. Funny enough, I did an event at Magazine London, which is a really nice new posh venue, square box, but really nice Broadwick venue that's up in London near the O2. And I did FKA Twig. And I've never heard of FKA Twig. And she was really good, actually. So they did a really, really good show. Really artistic. But yeah, couldn't have told you who she was until I thought it was a group.
Yeah.
So when going back sort of, over the years, do you get many summer holidays then, or are you like full on in the summer?
I don't know. I mean, I've
That's why I started Lapland.
yeah. Lapland was a bit weird. So those 5 or 6 years that I was working at Lapland, it was a bit better. But now it's I try and get in a holiday sort of early April or late April, maybe mid-September, but not during the summer.
Yeah.
I don't go out. I get a really nice tan doing the job, but I don't go out of the country.
No, don't. Well, I suppose you can't, can you? Because it's just not going to be the opportunity at that point. So, would you say the industry that you're in has evolved? You said like the equipment's kind of by and large stayed the same, but the tech has changed and that. But the industry as a whole, has it evolved over the last 30 years?
The technical side of stuff, so the sound and lights and stuff, has obviously changed dramatically over the years. We don't use incandescent light bulbs anymore. We use LED almost everywhere. Sound can be manipulated now so that it doesn't interfere with the local residents as much as it used to. The biggest change, and the change that is still ongoing, is the crew and crew welfare and health and safety. In the old days, it was some of the things I did when I was younger just terrify me now. And the responsibility as a crewing company owner to make sure that the welfare is provided, so that there are toilets, there are fresh drinking water, there's somewhere for them to rest, is really important, and it's really hard to still get in because it's a cost, and some of these people are trying to cut costs down to the absolute minimum to make money. So it's important that we keep banging that drum to get things to the way we want, and health and safety. So obviously, the health and safety checks that are now done on companies to make sure they're insured, to make sure their risk assessments are correct, their method statements are correct, is really, really important.
And what about your company? Where do you see it going? Have you got any plans for growing it beyond where it is at the moment?
Always. You have to grow.
Yeah.
If you stay still, you run out of money really quickly, I've noticed.
That's true.
So you have to keep going. So we are diversifying into the corporate market. We're trying to change our dynamic and the way that we look and the way that we're presented and the way that we're seen in the industry. So that's one of the big things we're doing. We're looking abroad. There's seasons elsewhere, that summer seasons in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
That's quite challenging and very expensive to set that up. But and then potentially doing a bit of training. Training is an important part of what we do. So that we can just
training other people on sort of site set up and management.
We've done quite a lot of the training videos and stuff like that, but we'd like to get people trained up properly and get their certificates and stuff like that. So it's all legitimate.
Is that with the crew as well? I mean, where do you get your crew from? Is it?
It's same place as everybody else gets their labour from. We advertise on Indeed.
Yeah.
We advertise a little bit on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's not great for crew.
Yeah.
Crew are a little bit more Facebook, TikTok-y.
Yeah.
Would they be? I'm just trying to think. Would they come from like an electrician's, like a chippy? Or
there's there's a few sort of jobbing. It's not great for people who don't have some kind of idea about being flexible with their hours. You know, it's not a 9 to 5 job Monday to Friday. It is a 8 till 8 job Monday to Sunday.
In my mind, it's kind of like going onto an oil rig for us, because it's like you're working for that 6 month period, I guess.
Yeah, the guys that work for us sometimes, you know, they do just do 6 months, and then they go to Thailand for 6 months or whatever, where it's cheap to keep their costs down while they wait for the season to come back. But it is a constant challenge, because, you know, as you're trying to increase your sales, which, you know, obviously I've spoken to you about, is increasing sales is a key driver to our business. But if you've got a good salesman that's selling you and keeps selling you, at some point you run out of product. And it's not a case with crewing that you can just go to the local wholesaler and buy more crew. You have to go through that whole process of advertising, interviewing, onboarding, testing. So it's really important to.
So have you got some crew that have been with you for years then, that come back and come back again?
Yeah, I've still got crew that have been with me since day we started, so 2015. So they're getting a bit creaky now. They probably wouldn't like me saying that, but they know they are getting creaky. So
I guess with something so physical like that, there probably is a shelf life on how long you can do the job for then, or?
I think most of them will just continue until they can't, because it's a lifestyle thing. You know, once you've been doing it for 10 years, and some of these guys have been doing it for even longer than they work for me. You know, they came from other crewing companies. So if they've been doing it as long as they've been doing it, then what else are they going to do? I mean, it was challenging during COVID. You know, COVID was a.
I was going to say that must have really, because all those events would have been cancelled.
I literally watched £1.5 million worth of work just fall off a cliff. You know, literally on the Thursday afternoon when we were going into the first lockdown. The phone calls just went through them and they just dropped. But we pivoted, and we were really, really lucky that we managed to we were requested to help move the dead bodies during COVID. So it was we were part of the London support network on the crematoriums and stuff like that. So that was, and even though at the time me and my business partner were like, what are we doing? This is really not good. The response from our crew was amazing.
I was going to say, the boys,
because they were all looking at destitution. They were literally looking at being kicked out of their flats because they had no money, because there was it wasn't just us that had stopped. The whole entertainment industry had dissipated completely. So we were really, really lucky with that. We survived because of that.
That's what kept you going through that period, and then I suppose as things reopened again, then you were able to start.
When it reopened, when the restrictions were lifted, that first 6 months after COVID was restricted, it was absolute pandemonium. I mean, it literally, because everybody had to effectively facilitate all of the events that they'd been paid for in 2020.
Yeah, they all happened at different weird times of the year after that. For a bit,
they just
didn't
got
they?
all compressed into like a 3-month period.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough crew. It was chaos. It was really not a very pleasant time.
Has there ever been a time when the weather's been so bad that you haven't been able to set up because you've got this finite. Everyone's paid money to arrive on July the 17th.
Yeah.
You say you give yourself 10 days.
Yeah. So I've touched wood. I've never not opened a show. I've come very close. The Why Not Festival last year, or a couple of years ago, was pretty horrific. The biggest, or the closest I've come before that, is Festival on the Isle of Wight. We had a massive storm come in 2 or 3 days before opening, so there was no working because all the fence and the T-shield and everything was being just blown as like weapons across sites, like rolling through the sites. So we just, we had to hold the site for 3 days. So and that was like almost up to doors. So then the last hour or the last few hours before, it was just 18 hours of solid work to try and get the show open. But luckily I've never actually lost a show.
I mean, challenging though that must be, it must also be a little bit exciting flying by the seat of your pants, as it were.
I mean, I came to the realisation, because I ran Reading Festival at the age of, I think I was 28 as site manager.
Yeah.
And it was 65,000 cap show at that point there. And I was pretty much left on my own, because Melvin, who owns Reading and Leeds, and his site manager Luke they were up in Leeds, looking up Leeds, because they happened at the same time. So I got kind of left in Reading. And I can remember lying in bed one day going, Jesus, I am responsible for pulling this show off. And I remember saying to myself, there are 60,000 people turning up on Friday, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And you have to be ready.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've kept with me all the way through.
Yeah.
You got no choice.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's a good motto to live by. As you say, you've got all these people turning up. What are you going to do otherwise?
Yeah, exactly. You can't tell them all not to turn up till Friday if they're turning up on Thursday.
Yeah, you can't miss that deadline at all. Well, I think we are coming to the end of our time now, so we're going to have to wrap it up there. But it's been really great talking to you, Dan, and hearing about setting up for festivals and stuff. Honestly, it's an area that you know these festivals happen, you see them on the news, but you never really think about the bit before and after and all the work that entails.
You painted the picture at the beginning. You walk onto a green field.
Yeah.
You build it.
Yeah. And we leave no trace.
And then you leave no trace.
Yes, I mean literally no trace.
Yeah.
I mean, apart from a little bit of maybe brown grass.
Yeah.
There's no litter. There's nothing left. And it's all, like I say, it's in 20-day build and 10-day takedown or whatever it is, and the show happens and hopefully, 99 times out of 100, everyone turns up, has an amazing time, and raves about it, and wants to come back next year.
Yeah.
So,
well, given the popularity of festivals in the UK, I'd say they probably do, don't they?
Yeah, it is hard though, because the bank of mum and dad don't have any money, and they buy a lot of tickets.
Yeah, they are expensive tickets. My
really
kids have looked at them.
Now, yeah.
It's a lot of money. Well, thank you again, Dan. It's been really great having you, and until the next time, I guess.
Yeah, thank you very much. And where can people find more about you and
siteandstage.co.uk is our website. So drop on there.
Brilliant.
Super.
Thank you.
Hubbub, a chaotic din caused by a crowd of people.